PlayStation's annual Days of Play sale kicked off yesterday, and there are a ton of PSVR games on sale, with quite a few of them having additional discounts for PS Plus subscribers. So let's take a look and see if any of them are worth picking up. I should also mention that for anyone looking for a new or replacement PSVR headset, over on the official PlayStation Store you can pick up the Iron Man bundle, which includes the headset, game, camera, and 2 Move controllers for just $250. A pretty awesome deal considering that 2 Moves alone usually cost $100. Just remember, the sale ends on June 8th, and thanks of course goes out to DuranFan as always for putting this list together. Although it's pretty disappointing that we never got more than 4 of the 18 floors, and some regions never even got that many, the escape rooms offered up here are pretty cool and have a horror slant to them, despite never actually being all that scary. $6 is probably the right price, and you'll get a few hours of fun from figuring out the puzzles. A Fisherman's Tale starts off strong with one of the most interesting puzzle mechanics I've ever seen in a game, but sadly the last third of this only 90-minute adventure kind of falls apart. For $4 or $5 though, it's worth experiencing. I'm sure everyone knows my opinion about After the Fall by now, which is that it's painfully average and the gameplay loop is unrewarding and monotonous. Thankfully though, it's got 4-player co-op, so if you really need something to play with your friends, this will keep you entertained for maybe a day or two. Tokyo Chronos proved that traditional visual novels just don't really work in VR, because no one wants to put on a headset to read for hours on end. Luckily though, Alt Deus is far better than its predecessor, adding way more interactions to the experience. So if you love visual novels, this is probably the one to get. Still though, it's an easy one to skip. There aren't too many fast-paced competitive first-person shooters on PSVR, so if you're looking for a good alternative to Firewall 0 Hour's slower tactical combat, Alvo might have just what you're looking for. And with the newest update that just came out earlier today, Alvo brings dual wielding, a new map, and an all-new zombies mode. The Angry Birds formula works surprisingly well in VR, so Isle of Pigs is pretty fun. Plus there were plenty of levels added for free after launch, so you'll definitely get your money's worth here. Anytime Arizona Sunshine gets below $10 or $12, we usually say give it a chance. Yeah, it's not exactly seamless, but playing the campaign in 2-player co-op is fun, mostly because you'll be dying laughing from the unintentionally hilarious animations. The only reason to ever buy Art Pulse is for a cheap and easy platinum trophy. Other than that, you really stay far away. Before Synth Riders made its way to PSVR, there was Beats Fever, which had somewhat similar gameplay. But even though this game was kind of fun, Synth Riders has made it absolutely irrelevant. Blair Witch VR is one of my favorite games of last year. It had a great campaign that clocked in around 4 or 5 hours, awesome environments, fun scares, and controls that were ported over to PSVR perfectly. Horror fans need Blair Witch in their library. On the surface, Blasters of the Universe is just another wave shooter, and if there's one thing we don't need on PSVR, it's more wave shooters. But Blasters adds a bullet hell dodging mechanic, a fun early 80s vibe, and probably most importantly, customizable weapons with a ton of unlockable parts that let you play however you want. Even though I didn't love Blind, it's a pretty cool concept for a game. You walk around without sight, tapping your cane against surfaces to see your surroundings echolocation style. There's a great horror vibe here and a few interesting puzzles, but the game quickly devolves into mediocrity with a pretty terrible finale. Still though, for $2.50, it's worth checking out. Box VR has some serious issues that include tracking problems in a super bare bones multiplayer mode. That said, I played it daily for months with friends, and not only did we lose some weight, we also had a good time. Just don't expect too much here. Brainbeats claims to have some sort of mental health angle, but in reality it's just a really poor Beat Saber clone. Avoid this one at all costs. I honestly do love Bullet Roulette. You sit around the table with friends, there are special cards dealt, and you bet coins on each other's lives. It's a little buggy and there's no voice chat, but I'd absolutely pick this up for the $3 asking price, just to have it around whenever someone tries to get a game going. When Cave Digger launched, it was a pretty simple mining game with a ton of cool secrets to discover, but you were mostly standing in one place digging out the walls of your mineshaft. Today, after all the updates, it's a much bigger game with a lot more to discover, a train that takes you deep into the caves with so many new areas to explore. Sure, it's low budget, but for $1.50, not bad. In a world where Saints and Sinners, Onslaught, and Arizona Sunshine exist, it's hard to recommend a subpar zombie shooter like Contagion VR Outbreak. The first and fourth level are actually really good, but the second level feels drab, and the third is a strange escape room that's totally out of place here. But because it's so heavily discounted, you might still have some fun with this one for $6. Covert is only really fun if you have a friend to play with, and one that doesn't mind sitting and staring at a mobile device for the entire game. That person can guide the VR gamer away from traps, disable security cameras, and let them know when the guards have their back turned. I had fun with this one. Crystal Rift is a super old school grid-based dungeon crawler. It's basic, but there's still some fun to be had here, avoiding traps, killing enemies, and finding ways to unlock the gates in order to move forward. It's probably worth it for the price. Darknet's essentially Minesweeper in VR, and I don't want to put on a VR headset just to play Minesweeper. So you guys know that I love my horror games, and while yes, I do endorse this one, it's only for fans of old school point-and-click adventure games. The environments here are super primitive, and the movement only allows you to slide from node to node. Personally, I love it, but I know a lot of you won't. Demo Reborn is such a beautiful game, and it always finds a place on my personal top 25 list. Half of it's a puzzle-solving adventure, and the other half is a piano rhythm game, and both halves are pretty cool. For the launch price of $40, I could see people holding off, but for $20, it's a must-have. This is probably one of the best deals on the entire list. When Dirt Rally launched, it was a $60 game with a VR upgrade that cost an additional $10. So being able to get this entire $70 package for just $4 is kind of insane. Dirt Rally is tough, but once you get the hang of your co-driver's callouts, you'll find one of the best looking, best playing racers on PSVR. Not that there's a ton of competition. Before Minecraft came to PSVR, Discovery was our only option, and it was really fun to create these worlds in VR. But the promised survival mode just never came, and then Minecraft swooped in and made Discovery irrelevant. First time I played Don't Knock Twice, I didn't experience a single bug. But since then, and this might be related to playing it on the Pro or the PlayStation 5, every playthrough has been pretty glitchy. For $5, it's worth playing through if you need another horror game in your life, but everyone else should definitely stay far away. While it's true that Doom 3 VR could have run in a higher resolution and has some strange world scaling issues, you won't care about any of that when you're blasting away demons and zombies with your aim controller for 12 hours straight. Plus, with all the DLC included, the $5 sale price couldn't be any more attractive. Doom 3 appropriately reeks of early 2000s game design, but man, that's just part of the fun here. Doom VFR is admittedly kind of all over the place. It's a great Doom game no matter how you slice it, but the overall runtime is a little short, the narrative feels way out of place, and the lack of full locomotion or turn buttons with the moves was a questionable decision at best. But once you get past all of that, playing with the DualShock 4 or AIM is fast and fluid and delivers exactly what you want. It's a more traditional Doom game than Doom 3, and the included classic Doom levels are really fun to experience in VR. The big selling point of Drone Striker is that it supports the DualShock 4, AIM, and Move controllers, but other than that, it's a pretty simple and relatively unexciting rail shooter. It's not bad, but it's certainly not great. Drunken Bar Fight has come a long way since release, and while it's still a pretty clunky brawler, it's admittedly fun to smash literally everything in sight against your enemies and cause chaos. So even though I can't really recommend it, I get why people like it. Eclipse came along during a pretty slow time for PSVR, so even though it was a short adventure and a mobile port, it filled a need at the time. The back half of the game is far better than the front half, and oh, there's jetpacks, so at least there's that. That aside, there's really nothing here you can't live without though. With big budget games like Star Wars Squadrons and Eve Valkyrie out there, you might not think there's any need for end space in your library. In all fairness, there's nothing to do between each mission, and it does seem kind of like you're staying still while the action is happening all around you. But I still enjoyed my time here, and for $4, it's not a bad way to spend an afternoon. Even though it looks like a ripoff of Farpoint, Evasion is very much its own game. The longer you play this first-person shooter, the more you'll realize it's kind of just a cleverly designed wave shooter, which admittedly can get tiring fast, especially when most of the enemies are just giant bullet sponges. That said, if you play online in 2-player co-op, you'll definitely get your $10 out of this one. I have no idea who the target audience for this game is, but having to play Focus on You for review was actually pretty fun. It's a super sweet, innocent love story. There aren't any branching paths, and the photography element only adds a minimal amount of gameplay to the overall experience, so it's one and done, and I can't imagine too many people finding anything worthwhile here. I consider Freediver Triton down a true hidden gem for PSVR. It's actually not a great game, and clocking in at just 90 minutes, the fact that the developers even tried to include a story here seems kinda silly. But the locomotion asks you to swim and grab onto cave walls to pull yourself through the water, and made the game crazy immersive. So if you couldn't tell by now, I've played, I think, every PlayStation VR game ever made. But there are a few like Fuji that are so slow-paced and don't quite achieve the whole meditative chill vibe that they're going for, causing me to just feel sleepy. I never finished this one, and I'm actually okay with that. Man, the hype surrounding Gorn on release was truly next level, and nothing could have ever lived up to that. But Gorn is still a decent arena fighter with good controls, fun weapons, and some cool bosses. And for people who love messing with modifiers, there's a lot of those here, so if that's your thing, go for it. The fact that Like Father Like Son acts as a true sequel to the Groundhog Day movie is the most appealing part of the game. It's interesting to return to Puxatawny and relive the same day over and over, trying to solve the whole town's problems. The gameplay is incredibly bland, and I don't think this is terribly immersive. But as a fan of the movie, I really enjoyed the story. The puzzles in Gravitational are all built around the fact that the character you play as is in a wheelchair, and there are big areas of the floor missing. So while the puzzles are okay, when a game is only 2 hours long, it should be exciting or at least interesting for all 2 hours, which Gravitational never was. Gun Club's two biggest selling points are the realistic weapons and the weapon customization, but beyond that, the levels and challenges are both a lot of fun, so if you're a gun nut, this one's for you. There's a lot going on with Guns & Stories Bulletproof, with a decent campaign, some fun minigame challenges, and a good variety of weapons. But throughout the course of my playthrough, I couldn't shake the feeling that the game just lacks excitement, which isn't helped by the fact that every wave just stretches on far too long. Again, not bad, but not great either. Okay, if you don't have Hitman 3 already, there's two things you need to know. First, there's no move support, which makes punching and doing any of the motion-controlled actions with your DualShock 4 super awkward. And two, it's a brilliantly designed sandbox game that gives you a million reasons to replay each level again and again. It's stunningly beautiful in the headset, and all the levels are amazingly well designed. That said, if you don't own any of the Hitman games, then you really need to pick up the trilogy. Importing Hitman 1 and 2 into Hitman 3 allows you to play them all in VR. And yes, they're all amazing. Home Sweet Home adds just enough stealth and puzzle solving to its 5-hour campaign to make it feel like more than your typical PSVR walking sim. And the scares here are awesome. The reason it's hard to recommend fully though is that near the end, the game crashes during a particular boss fight, forcing you to play through that segment in non-VR if you want to progress. And that's a real shame, because other than that, it's one of the best horror games on the platform. Probably one of the most ridiculous games on PSVR. In Hotballing the Badlands, you ride around on a stick horse, shooting down other enemies who are also on stick horses. The silly premise and the silly controls made me laugh a lot, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time this game's ever been on sale since launch, so you might want to grab it if you've been curious. Hotel R&R lets you live out the rock fantasy of not playing on stage, but totally destroying hotel rooms. It starts off relatively tame, but the more you play, the more insane weapons you can unlock to cause massive amounts of destruction. There's not anything else like it on PSVR, and this is a really great price. One of the only real complaints you could lobby against I Expect You to Die 2 is that it's just too safe, playing a bit too much like the original. But when the original was one of the best escape room games on PlayStation VR, it's hard to complain too much. What's here oozes quality, and there are plenty of reasons to replay this one a few times. So even though this isn't a huge discount, it's definitely worth the asking price. Sure, it's really similar to every other cooking sim out there, and it's blurry as hell, but I still enjoyed I'm Hungry. Just be warned, it's a little buggy and light on content, so only get this one if you desperately need another cooking sim. Considering that Job Simulator launched at $30 and is still one of the best-selling PSVR games out there, $14 is a pretty decent price. It's definitely designed for people who love to experiment, play with things around them, and see how different items interact with each other, and the humor here is pretty good too. It's a PSVR classic that's kind of skewed toward a younger audience, but still fun for everyone. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is one of the best examples of asymmetrical gameplay in VR. One player's in VR disarming a bomb, but the instructions are on the flat screen. So the other people in the room have to ask questions about what the bomb looks like, and then try to explain how to disarm it before time runs out. It's super stressful and insanely difficult, but if you've got a group of friends, or even one friend that'll play this with you, it's a must-have.
That wasn't it, guys. It's going faster. What do I do?
Okay, so that wraps up the first half of the insane State of Play PSVR sale. The next video will be out soon. These things take forever. So in the meantime, just remember that the sale ends on June 8th.